This week on the BackTable podcast.
I've been injured. I know what it's like to be in pain. I know what it is like to have your life completely altered by a physical ailment. And to be able to look my patients in the eyes and have that empathy, to be able to say, I understand and there's hope. You always want to give a patient hope. You always want them to know that there's a way out, that there can be a better way. And so being able to impart that onto my patients as well on a day-to-day basis, all of a sudden, there becomes a buzz about your practice. It becomes a buzz about you as a physician, that there's something different about this guy. He actually cares. And while that takes time to build that reputation, once that really clicks, then that buzz is out there and you can really have a joyful and exciting practice to go to every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BackTable podcast, your source for all things interventional and endovascular. You can find all previous episodes of our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and on backtable.com.
Before we dive into our topic today, just want to say a quick word from our sponsor, RADPAD. RADPAD radiation protection products, developed by physicians for physicians and clinically proven to protect during cine and digital subtraction angiography. Don't bet your health on anything less. Trust RADPAD protection for all your interventions. See radpad.com for more information and contact info@radpad.com to learn more about radiation safety CME credits for you and your team.
This is Jacob Fleming as your guest host this week, and I'm very excited to introduce our special guest, fellow Dallasite and interventional spine and pain specialist, Dr. John Michels. Dr. Michels, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Jacob.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And Dr. Michels, I'm really looking forward to this, been looking forward to this for quite some time now, and hearing your perspective, which is unique for many reasons. As a fellowship-trained pain specialist with a background in radiology, I know our listeners will be interested to hear about your approach and practice. And I'm sure you get this all the time, but I believe this is the first time BackTable has had the honor of hosting a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, it was an amazing former life that I used to live in. You know, we just actually had our 25th anniversary reunion of that Super Bowl team this fall.
Oh, wow.
So I got to go back to Green Bay, get back together with Brett Favre and Andre Rison and some of those Super Bowl stars. And yeah, it was an amazing time of life.
That's just amazing, and really looking forward to talking about that today. I really do want to focus on that journey. And before we delve into that, I'd just like if we could get some general background on interventional pain for our audience. You know, most of our listeners are practicing or aspiring interventional radiologists and probably have some knowledge or experience with interventional pain techniques, especially in certain areas, you know, kyphoplasty and these kind of things. But I think that as a whole in our community, we're a little less familiar with the breadth of interventional pain as a specialty of its own. So I'm curious, what do you call your specialty and how would you describe it?
So the basis of what I do is minimally invasive spine and pain management. That's how I describe myself when someone asks what I do. I think oftentimes when we use the term pain management, Oxycontin comes into people's minds. And so for the listeners to know that I actually don't prescribe opioids to any of my patients. I do all image-guided procedures to treat pain at its source. Much of the pain obviously being generated from spinal issues, be it a disc herniation, be it facet joint arthrosis, be it peripheral nerve injuries. Those are the targets that we're going after and really trying to minimize a patient's pain by getting to the pain generator itself using image guiding techniques.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think that's a, very wonderfully concise way of explaining it. I like that you mentioned that you are not really involved in so much the direct kind of long-term medical management of pain, but rather finding ways to mitigate that, especially with this opioid crisis that we're still finding ourselves in. I'm sure we'll talk about that more at length later. But what you're describing, you know, really fits into the way that interventional radiologists think about things. And it really excited to hear about your experience with practicing in this specific area of medicine. And then, of course, your journey to that point. And so I'd like to start focusing on that now. And I just think this story is so fascinating. I really don't want you to spare any detail. So would you mind kind of telling us about, you know, where did you grow up and how did you get yourself on a trajectory to collegiate and professional football?
So I grew up in La Jolla, California. It's a small suburb of San Diego. And as a kid, I grew up watching the Dan Fouts era San Diego Chargers and watching those teams have the great success that they had. Now, they never won a Super Bowl, but obviously the Air Coryell days really transformed the way football was played. And I remember as a kid on the playground dreaming of playing in a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl. I started playing football in the 4th and 5th grade and wasn't very good. I was probably the worst kid on my team. I was tall, gangly, awkward. And then they canceled that football program, and I didn't play again until high school. And by that time, I had grown into my body, became more coordinated, was getting stronger, and really found my niche. This was something that I was good at, I was passionate about. And so throughout my high school career, starting to gain more accolades, becoming an all-star, an all-American, and getting recruited by universities throughout the country. I settled my heart on the University of Southern California. Also growing up in Southern California, I grew up watching the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, bowl games. And USC was going, year after year to the Rose Bowl, watching some of the all-time greats playing those games. And so having dreams of playing there, I decided that USC is where I wanted to play college football. And also because at the time they had sent more players to the National Football League than any university in the country. And so I thought this was going to be the thing that was going to be the catalyst that was going to enable me to achieve these dreams of playing in the NFL. Now, interesting enough, I get to USC and I sit on the bench for the first 3 years that I'm there. I backed up an All-American and a first-round draft pick named Willie McGinnis, who was a defensive end. He's in the New England Patriots Hall of Fame. He won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots. And then John Robinson came in to be the coach halfway through my time at USC. And he said, John, I don't think you're a defensive end. I think you'd be a better offensive tackle. And I said, look, if I'm going to play, let's do that. Let's do it. And then he proceeds to move me behind Tony Baselli, who was another 3-time All-American at USC, went on to be the first overall pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, and is now just this summer will be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. So sitting on the bench for 3 years at USC going, gosh, I'm learning from the best on how to make it to the NFL and how to be successful. And so sure enough, I got my opportunity and was a first-round draft pick by the Green Bay Packers. We won the Rose Bowl my senior year at USC, and then I proceeded to go and play in 2 Super Bowls with the Packers and thrust into the starting lineup right off the bat. I was originally going to back up another USC Trojan named Ken Rutgers in Green Bay, but Ken suffered a knee injury my rookie year, and I was thrust into the starting lineup. Made first-team NFL All-Rookie that year. I was the Green Bay Packers Rookie of the Year, and we went on to win Super Bowl 31. In my second season, I start the first 5 games, blew out my knee, and then ended up sitting on the bench for the rest of the year. But we went to a second Super Bowl that year. And then in my third training camp, destroyed my right knee. Ended up having 6 surgeries to reconstruct my knee and have never run since. This was in 1998 that happened. Tried to go back and play in 1999, and I couldn't run on my knee. And that was the end of my NFL career.
I'd like to jump in on that, Dr. Michels. There's so many amazing facets of what you just discussed. And a thread I already see throughout everything you're describing is you are really a person who sees the opportunity in front of you, even when things are not playing out kind of as expected. And, my father played collegiate football as well. And so I know kind of this story quite well, that extremely talented high school athlete comes in ready to just take on the world, continue that meteoric rise to the NFL. And then you sit on the bench, and it's a really challenging thing to do, to come, kind of big fish, smaller pond, and then get into the kind of this bigger area. And I just like to, can you elaborate on your thought process going through that?
Well, I think we, as physicians, we've learned from some great people around us. I think that's how we've gained a lot of the skills and talents that we have. And it was no different with sports. I think when you are really honest with yourself and your skill level, I think you can always find areas to improve. And so coming out of high school as an All-American and then getting to USC, all of a sudden you realize, wow, there's a big jump in the talent when I get to this, like you said, larger pond. And all of a sudden you have one of 2 choices. You either have an arrogance thinking I've got all of this made and everyone else is stupid and that's why I'm not playing, or you go, I've got a lot to learn. There's a lot of growth to be had here, and I'm going to take this opportunity to become the best version of myself that I can become. And so for me, it was looking at these two All-American players, Willie McGinnis on the defensive side of the ball, Tony Baselli on the offensive side of the ball, and watching the way that they prepared, the way they watched film, the way they trained in the weight room, the way that they approached the game, all of the mindset that they took into preparing week in and week out, and saying, how do I match that level of intensity? And so going into medicine, I think we have the same thing. I think we've been around some amazing radiologists, people who have transformed the field. I think all of us are around people who are doing things in an amazing way. And we can either go, we know everything, or we can humble ourselves and say, what can I learn from them? How can I change my approach? And I think what's going to make us great doctors is doing that on a day in and day out basis. I don't care how long you've been in practice. To be humble and go, how can I be better today, is only going to enhance the impact that we have on our patients.
Wow, that was wonderfully said. I couldn't agree any more with that. It's just such an important perspective, this growth mindset to have. And, you know, the element where that really comes out in your story is, of course, with your injury. And I just can't imagine you're on this meteoric rise and it kind of abruptly stops. I just can't imagine what that was like for you. I was wondering, could you tell us about, you know, what was the nature of the injury and what's going through your head during all this? You're kind of starting at some point, presumably, to think about, okay, it's time to pivot. And what was that like for you?
The injury happened in training camp, and we had just played the Oakland Raiders in Oakland. We got beat in preseason. Mike Holmgren was our coach at the time, and he was furious. And we came back to Green Bay. It had rained all weekend in Green Bay. There's mud all over the field. And he said, there are no excuses tomorrow. We are going to practice hard. We're going to be in full pads. You guys better wear the right shoes out there. I don't want to hear about people slipping around. And we knew that things were serious. We had just, come off a Super Bowl loss, and we were expected to go back to the Super Bowl again. So we were doing a drill, one-on-one pass protection on a muddy field. I was going against that year's first-round draft pick, Vonnie Holliday, a defensive end who had a great, long NFL career. And I took my pass set, and Vonnie grabbed the inside shoulder pad, my right shoulder. My foot stuck in the mud. He pulled on me. I twisted over my knee and then folded my knee in half. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my medial collateral ligament. I tore my lateral meniscus. I took a quarter-sized divot of bone off the trochlear groove of my femur, and it was just a devastating injury. One of those where I hit the ground, grabbed my knee in pain, and knew instantly I was in a lot of trouble. I went to go have an MRI done, and this was one of those moments that has just stuck with me as a physician. Obviously, my whole life, I had dreamed of being an NFL athlete. I was living my dream, and now that dream was hanging in the balance of this injury and this severe pain that I'm in. I go to have this MRI done. I come out of the scanner, and the radiologist comes in, and he goes, yeah, there's nothing there. And for a moment, I had this glimmer of hope. And then jokingly, he says, yeah, there's nothing left. You destroyed it all.
Oh.
And I went, this guy just absolutely missed the moment. He doesn't understand that my dreams, my hopes are hanging on every word that he's saying. And he wants to make a joke of the situation. And that stuck with me, to never trivialize a patient's experience. You've got to realize they're scared. Their hopes are hanging on our words, and we need to choose our words carefully and appropriately. So his words have always stuck with me through my medical career of, don't be that guy. Don't ever be that guy.
Wow. So, you had that experience relatively early on in this process, interface with medicine and with a radiologist specifically. I imagine that had to plant some sort of seed for you. And I'm wondering, can you talk about, as you continued on in this process, deciding to go to medicine, what are the things that are guiding you in that direction?
The injury played a huge role in that. I actually had no science in my background. I had no plans of becoming a doctor. I was a
You weren't a pre-med at USC, right?
I was a religious studies. Yeah, religious studies major at USC. The furthest thing from pre-med, there was like zero science in my background. And, through the injury, like I said, I had 6 surgeries, all the rehabilitation that I was going through, all the physicians that I was seeing. And having come to the realization that I lost the ability to do the thing that I love to do most in life to an injury. And I said, you know what, if I could keep that from happening to someone else, that makes this whole experience worthwhile. And so that was kind of the catalyst that made me start to consider, could I do medicine? Is this something that I could actually be successful at? And I didn't know. Like I said, I hadn't taken a chemistry class or biochem, much less OChem or any of these courses. And I didn't know if I could even have success in that. One of the things that I had been kind of dreaming of as a kid as well was I loved to fly. And I said, wouldn't it be great to get my pilot's license? And so after the injury and through the course of rehabilitating from the injury and trying to get back on the field, I decided to go pursue getting my pilot's license. And those concepts were so foreign to anything that I had ever done, learning navigation and learning about weather patterns and learning aerodynamics. But I had success doing this foreign thing and had so much fun doing it that I think it opened up my mind to the possibility of, if you have a passion towards something, if you know why you're wanting to do it, then you can learn anything. You have the capability to learn any information and learn any material and apply it successfully and have a successful career. And I think that gave me the courage to say, okay, I think I could potentially do medicine. I think I should really try to pursue this because I understand why I would be becoming a doctor. I have my purpose, my reasons, and then all it is applying the information that I learn and really moving forward to have success and having the discipline of being an athlete and knowing how to self-sacrifice and knowing how to have that delayed gratification towards a greater goal. I think those are things that doctors can really appreciate and athletes can appreciate, is that there's a lot of delayed gratification in what we do, especially during the years of our medical training. It's, all the work and pride you can swallow. And so, I think being an athlete and having that athlete mentality helped me have success down that journey of taking those steps to pursuing a career in medicine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just, I can only imagine once you've done, years of two-a-days and grueling workouts, and especially at the NFL level, having to put in, 6 hours of studying during the day seems like a total cakewalk, probably.
I remember sitting in my first year of medical school and people being so stressed going, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I said, I don't have a 300-pound defensive lineman trying to earhole me while I'm taking this test.
Yeah.
This is easy. I can just focus on this test. That's all I have to do. There's not a million people watching on television critiquing every answer to my test. I can just take it, and it's between me and the professor. No stress. This is easy.
Absolutely. Wow. So just clearly such a valuable perspective to have. So, you're going through med school. When did you decide on radiology? Were you thinking about other things, kind of the stereotypical sort of athlete stories, ortho or maybe neurosurgery or whatever? Were those on the plate, other things like sports medicine? And how did radiology emerge to be the victor?
I went in with an open mind to medicine. Now, obviously, the day I set foot on a medical campus, everyone was like, you're going into ortho. And,
of course, it's been foretold.
Yeah, I think as a former professional athlete, everyone's going, yeah, you're going to be an orthopedic surgeon, no question about it. But I really kept an open mind and was looking at things like anesthesia, radiology, sports medicine, obviously orthopedics. And so it was really kind of the course of going through the process and really experiencing all of my rotations. I did a little bit of research in interventional radiology pretty early on because I liked the concept of the minimally invasive image-guided procedures. And so I actually did some clinical research on inferior vena cava filters and malfunction of IVC filters. And so that was one process that I went down. And then, during my orthopedic surgery rotation, one of the things that made me really turn away from it is I was in about a 6-hour hip replacement surgery and having the injury to my knee. I mean, I obviously have some physical issues that I deal with and cope with on a day-to-day basis. And I remember standing there in lead for 6 hours during this hip replacement surgery. And at the end of it, I was hurting so bad. And I was like, I don't think I could physically handle a career in this. I think it would just be too physically grueling. I don't know that my body could hold up to this. So that was one of the things that really turned me away from ortho. The other thing, having had, a total of 8 surgeries in my life, the thing that really appealed to me with interventional radiology was, especially looking at some of the vascular procedures that we were doing. And there was time in medicine where you'd have to crack someone basically from neck to navel and open them up in order to cauterize bleeders and clip things off. And now we're taking, a small needle through a catheter in the groin and being able to coil off bleeds and fix aneurysms. And I thought, this is really amazing stuff that the patient's walking out of here right after this. They're not sitting in an intensive care unit for, a week afterwards fighting post-operative infections. We've really transformed the way medicine is practiced. And that kind of started my mind rolling of, gosh, could we do this for orthopedic injuries, for spine injuries? Is that a possibility?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're your head is kind of already thinking about interventional, MSK, interventional pain and spine. You're kind of already thinking about that as a possibility before you start residency, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Great. So you end up, you match to residency, Baylor College of Medicine, our buddies down in Houston. And so you've had a fairly circuitous pathway. What was it like coming to Texas and Houston of all places? From,
my mom,
Yeah,
from San Diego. My mom was actually born and raised in Houston. I had spent a lot of time in Houston. My grandmother lived there. My aunt still continues to live there. And so we used to go to Houston about once a year. So it was a place that I was familiar with. The funny thing is, my mom moved from Houston. My mom and dad moved from Houston just before my older sister was born and moved to San Diego. And I remember during my 5-year residency, I'd be like, Mom, come back to Houston, come visit. And she'd be like, nah, come to San Diego. Come back and visit San Diego. So, but, I had a great experience. Baylor College of Medicine was an amazing institution to train at. We got to see all sorts of disease pathology. The interventional radiology program there is just an exceptional one. You get 4 straight months of interventional radiology training where you start off as the plebe and then you end up as the senior and really, helping to run that department. And so the experience that you get learning the interventional procedures, really having a lot of hands-on experience, and your skill set just dramatically jumps through that type of training experience that we received at Baylor. And so you begin to realize that, oh, wow, I've got this amazing confidence in my ability to use image guidance to direct procedures and therapies, be it biopsies or doing vascular procedures or spinal injections. Really boosted that confidence and made me realize I really love this interventional stuff. I don't necessarily want to sit in a dark room reading MRIs and CT scans all day long. I want to get my hands dirty a little bit. I really want to have that patient interaction.
Awesome. So you, like many people, I think tuning in, you had that inclination from very early on in residency. You're probably thinking, okay, the imaging is cool, but it's kind of instrumental rather than the end goal. And so, it sounds like you had a great experience on IR. You're getting really good at that. So how did you decide? When did you come to the fork in the road between IR and then interventional pain? How did you even find out that interventional pain was a viable path?
Those 4 months of IR, as fun and as exciting as they were also grueling. You were on call all the time. You're getting called in on nights. You're getting called in on weekends. You're getting called in on holidays. IR, there was no rest for the weary. And so while I loved the procedures, I didn't love the lifestyle. And so that was one of the things that started to kind of turn in my mind. I already had 3 kids at the time. And so thinking about my family and work-life balance, all of a sudden I just went, I love the work. I don't love the life. I don't know that I want to pursue this type of lifestyle for the rest of my career. And I ended up having dinner one night with an anesthesiologist. And he said to me, why don't more radiologists go into interventional pain? You guys invented all of these procedures that we're doing.
Exactly.
I don't know why there's no radiologists doing this. And that resonated with me. And so I did a little bit of research to say, are there any radiologists out there who are actually practicing interventional pain management? Because he was right. The procedures are all things that we're so used to doing. It's right in our wheelhouse. We invented all the procedures. You get that patient interaction, you get the interventional aspect of your career, but you don't have the night calls, the weekends, the holidays. You actually have a little bit better work-life balance. So doing some research, I found a doctor named Wong at the University of California at San Diego.
Yeah, Dr. Wong is a legend.
He's an absolute legend, neurointerventional radiologist for those of your listeners who don't know. He has since retired, but he actually left the neurointerventional space and only practiced pain management. So I got a hold of Wade and called him up and I said, "Hey, Wade, I'm curious about this life you've chosen and the route that you've gone down and wondering, is this a possibility? You know, I'm a radiologist, but I don't know of any other radiologists who are practicing pain. Is it possible?" And his response to me was, "Evidently," because he's been doing it all these years.
Yeah.
And so that was the catalyst for me to start to search for programs out there who would be open to taking a radiologist for a fellowship program. And it was right about that time that I'd finished my IR that we were starting that application process for fellowship. And so I had applied for an MSK fellowship kind of throughout the country, but then I started to look at interventional pain management programs out there and found the University of California, Irvine, and they pride themselves as being a multidisciplinary pain management program. So not just anesthesia-based or not just PM&R-based, but really having an open concept of physicians who could be talented and skilled in the interventional pain space and offering them opportunities to train. And so that's where I applied and was accepted and ended up pursuing that pathway of going to UCI and learning interventional pain management.
That's fascinating. And I think it illustrates a few things that I've found throughout my career so far. And one is that radiology is quite a small world, and it's so beneficial if you find out of someone who is doing kind of what you're interested in. You reach out to them and you are, 99% of the time going to get a positive response, and they're going to be encouraging in that way. And so you kind of went that route and you found out that UCI was the place you needed to be at. And I'm kind of curious, did you come up against hurdles? Did you find that a lot of programs were just kind of saying, "Nah, we're not going to train you"?
That was definitely a hurdle. I think there's a level of territorialness involved in medicine that is unfortunate, but I think there were certain programs that were afraid that if they opened the door to radiologists, that the floodgates were going to open up and that they were going to lose their grip on a niche market, and that radiologists obviously having the skill set to target just about anything with a needle and go after it. Their fear was that they were going to lose it. And so I found a little bit of bias that I was not an anesthesiologist or that I was not a physical medicine or rehabilitation physician, and did face some of those challenges during that process. But fortunately, like I said, I found a program that was open-minded, that saw the potential there. Some of the challenges that I also faced, the skill set that we have as radiologists, we have phenomenal imaging skills, phenomenal use, as interventional radiologists, phenomenal ability to target anything utilizing image guidance.
Yeah, visual spatial skills are off the charts.
100%. But our physical exam skills, they're lacking a little bit. So
they're a little atrophic, maybe.
Yeah, just a little bit. Since our intern year, we probably hadn't set hands on a whole lot of patients for a physical exam. So, that was where I felt a little bit behind the eight ball. And it was great to be able to be paired with actually a physical medicine and rehabilitation physician who obviously their physical exam skills are phenomenal. And so we got to really help each other throughout the training process. And that's where medicine can have just a great synergistic relationship between specialties, where our strengths we can utilize to help other people in their areas of weakness and vice versa. And so I was really blessed to have that training experience where a PM&R doctor really showed me the ropes on a physical exam.
Yeah, wow, that just sounds like a really, like you said, synergistic experience. And it's something I think about a lot. It can be, I see this a lot in radiology in general. It's kind of like, hey, why aren't we being more involved with other specialties and kind of having that intermingling aspect? We have a lot to teach each other and learn from each other. And especially as training is concerned, it seems like a better way to do it. And yet there's just kind of this territorial aspect of it that you spoke of. And I think that's kind of unfortunate. But, I think that people who know a little bit more about the interventional spine community, it's very clear that, there's a handful of radiologists who are very involved and really involved in the training and education of the professionals and the physicians in this area beyond the training programs. So that's kind of interesting to hear about your experience, kind of the bias overall, and then what ended up sounding like a very beneficial experience at your training program, and then kind of seeing just kind of how things are going overall. I think I would hope that interventional pain is kind of getting to more of a multidisciplinary kind of collaborative standpoint. I'm kind of curious, how have you seen that gone, since you've been in practice?
I think it is still a very anesthesia-dominated space. There are PM&R physicians there. There are a couple neurologists. There are a couple family practice physicians. Actually, one here in Dallas, Kaz Amerdelfin, is a family practice physician who's actually one of the leaders in the interventional pain space. So there have been those who have broken through that barrier, and then there's a handful of us radiologists who practice. And one of the things when I got through with my training, right after me, a year after me, a physician named Fred Weiss, who's a radiologist as well, who did a mammography and an emergency medicine fellowship and then did an interventional pain fellowship as well. Fred and I both petitioned the American Board of Radiology to make pain a pathway for radiologists. Can they sponsor us for the boards? Because I was not able to be sponsored by the boards for the American Board of Radiology for interventional pain management, and I had to go a different route. And so we actually petitioned the American Board of Radiology, and now it is an accepted pain pathway. The ABR will sponsor radiologists for the pain boards, and we can get our certification going that route now. So there's a lot of ground still to be gained. I think there needs to be a more diverse population of physicians who are practicing interventional pain. And I think more radiologists need to be made aware of one, how gratifying this specialty is. And one of the things that was a challenge with interventional radiology that I also faced was, a patient would be brought to you. You would treat them and then they would leave and you would have no idea how they did. Yeah. Did my therapy make any difference? Every now and again you'd get a biopsy result and know, did you get the tissue you were looking for or not? But you never really got to follow the patient. You didn't get to see him beforehand. You didn't get to play a role in the diagnosis, and you didn't get to see him afterwards. And one of the most gratifying things is the ability to meet these patients, use imaging, reading their MRIs, their X-rays, their CT scans, being able to come up with a diagnosis based on a physical exam, being able to then come up with a treatment algorithm, implement that treatment algorithm, and then follow up with the patient and actually see, did it work? Are you doing better? And there's such a great reward. And I would love more radiologists to know that pathway is there, that you can have some patient care and some interventional care, and that you get the reward of both of those worlds. And the imaging isn't lost. I use it every day. I read MRIs every single day. I just don't have to be the one dictating them.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Michels. And that's one thing we're hoping to accomplish by starting to focus on this area a little bit more on BackTable is, getting people to understand that there are definitely pathways to get involved and have a very gratifying career in this space, and may just require thinking a little bit outside the box of maybe a typical imaging group practice. And so on that note, I'm kind of curious, what's sort of the landscape like of interventional pain? Specifically, what was your experience starting out after training, kind of navigating the jobs? And how did you find yourself in your current practice?
I think the challenge across medicine is, how do you find the right job right out of training? And most doctors don't. Most doctors, jump from one to another until, I don't know what the statistics are, but I think it's 3 or 4 jobs before you land your permanent home is about the average. And I'm throwing that out of the air, but I think it's something in that ballpark range. I actually joined a group in Newport Beach, California. So right out of UC Irvine, I met a great interventional pain physician named Dr. Rick Pacious. He's an anesthesiologist, pain physician. He actually trained me in a spinal cord stimulator training course, a cadaver course, during my fellowship. He saw, gosh, this guy has great hands. He's got good interpersonal skills. And so he approached me at that point and said, hey, I'm looking for someone to join my practice. And we just hit it off, and he's got this great personality, an incredibly smart doctor, incredibly good hands, very talented. So I joined his practice initially. My wife then got an opportunity in Dallas. She's been in the mortgage banking industry. She's been a technology executive in mortgage banking. She was with JP Morgan Chase and the CEO of the mortgage banking division of Chase. came to Dallas to do a startup mortgage banking company, offered her the chief technology officer position. And I said, look, too good of a position for you to pass up. I can practice medicine anywhere. So I jumped to Dallas. I instantly joined a corporate medicine group here in Dallas, kind of a big business model, multi-physician group, and very quickly realized this isn't a good fit for me, and met 3 other doctors who were looking to add a fourth. And it was really kind of this independent practitioner model, start up my own thing. It's an eat what you kill model. We share kind of general overhead expenses. And that's where I've been for the last 7 years. I opened my own office, started my own practice, had my own office-based lab, hired my own staff, and I'm my own boss. And it's the best thing I can ever imagine. Really challenging to start with.
Sure.
It took me about a year to make money. I remember about 6 months into it, I turned to my wife and I said, did I make a huge mistake? Should I have just taken a salary job? But now I couldn't be happier with how my practice is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just hitting on that theme again throughout your journey of kind of coming into less than ideal circumstance and figuring out, okay, how are we going to make this work? So it sounds like you actually benefited from that short-lived position and kind of this more corporatized gig. And you kind of knew, okay, this is one way of doing things. I'm not really interested in going that way. And so, I guess the one thing I want to get your drill down on your thought process for is, how did you find out the things that were important to you in terms of finding that closer to ideal job? Knowing that there's no perfect job, there's trade-offs. It was probably no surprise to you that, starting off in this independent practice was going to be tough.
I knew that I really didn't like where the country was headed with opioid pain medications. And I knew that as interventionalists, our job was to treat pain in an alternative fashion so that we were not getting people addicted to potentially dangerous and deadly medications. And so, going through the corporate model where you had to do what the company line was, I said, that's not my practice philosophy. I know how I want to practice medicine. I know what my own, personal goals are, my own personal beliefs are. And so I want to practice medicine the way I want to practice medicine. I've trained, I feel competent in what I do, and I don't want someone else telling me how I need to do that. So that made jumping ship a little bit easier. But then, starting a pain practice in a very busy metropolitan center, Dallas. My joke is I could kick
Highland Park specifically.
Highland Park, nonetheless. My joke was I could kick a soccer ball and I could hit 3 pain doctors in the head. And it's almost true. They're so competitive. There's so many physicians around this area, and it's such a desirable place to live. But I knew that if I practice medicine the right way, if I care for patients in a way that they're not getting cared for elsewhere, that I'll be able to build this successfully. It just may take more time, because true, if I wrote opioids, I'd be busy right off the bat. People will come, they'll fill the doors if you're writing them drugs, but it's not how I wanted to practice. So really building a purely interventional practice on my own, it took time, and it took a little bit of that self-sacrifice that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, that delayed gratification. I love the movie Field of Dreams, and it was kind of, if you build it, they will come, but it's going to take time and sacrifice to do it the right way. And so that reward is now finally here. And it took me a couple of years to really build the reputation of providing just outstanding patient care and really caring about the patients and taking an interest in them and having a deeper understanding. I've been injured. I know what it's like to be in pain. I know what it is like to have your life completely altered by a physical ailment. And to be able to look my patients in the eyes and have that empathy, to be able to say, I understand and there's hope. And I remember, one of the early days of my radiology training at Baylor College of Medicine, a physician said to me, patients don't walk around on their x-rays. Be very careful what you say in your reports. Be very careful what you communicate to the patient. Even going back to my experience with the radiologist back when I had blown my knee out, that you always want to give a patient hope. You always want them to know that there's a way out, that there can be a better way. And so being able to impart that onto my patients as well on a day-to-day basis, all of a sudden, there becomes a buzz about your practice. It becomes a buzz about you as a physician, that there's something different about this guy. He actually cares. And there is actually hope when seeing him. And while that takes time to build that reputation, once that really clicks, then that buzz is out there, and you can really have a joyful and exciting practice to go to every day.
That's really inspiring. It's something we've discussed in a number of episodes previously on BackTable, people who are building up this OBL kind of focused practice. It takes a lot to get it going. And it seems, an important core value is just practicing good medicine and being that doctor you wish you had when you were kind of going through all this. And I think the issue that a lot of us run into is that issue of self-gratification. And so, it's kind of, you can really sacrifice for this span of time, a couple years for you to really get this going. You could just as easily, like you said, be writing opioids. I'm sure you could have found a job with any number of radiology groups. Those are all options. Those doors are never really shut. But if professional gratification is really what you're after, this is a great pathway to go through. It's not for everybody.
It isn't. And you're right. All those other jobs exist, and those are right for some physicians. They just weren't right for me. And so each of us has to explore, what are our own personal goals? What are our practice goals? How do we want our life to look from a professional and personal standpoint? And then you get to choose that pathway for yourself. And so just because this pathway was right for me may not be right for some of your listeners.
Absolutely. And I did want to hear a little bit more about your specific practice. So you mentioned you've got an OBL-based practice. I'd like to hear about the interplay between clinic time and procedural time, and kind of OBL versus ASC aspects.
So I'll take you through what my typical clinic week looks like. I do clinic Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. So from 8 to 3:30, I see patients on Monday and Wednesday, 8 to noon on Friday. We close the office at noon on Friday and give everybody a longer weekend. And it's nice to, having a family and being able to be there for different activities is always great. And so it was a personal choice that we made is shorter clinic days, 8 to 3:30, get out earlier, be there for after school activities, be there for family things. Tuesdays and Thursdays are my procedure days. I typically go about 8 to noon in my OBL. And then I go from about 12:30 until about 2 at an ancillary surgery center. And the way I make that decision, basically office-based procedures, I can do just about anything in the office-based lab. I can do kyphoplasties, spinal cord stimulator trials, rhizotomies, epidural steroid injections, ultrasound-guided, tendon sheath injections. I can really run the gamut, and I have all of that equipment in my office-based lab. But if a patient has any pretty more significant medical comorbidities, heart issues, lung issues, liver disease, they're not ambulatory, they can't climb up on a table and get down off a table by themselves, then I make the decision to bring them over to the ASC. We have a little bit higher level of care, obviously, in an ASC than we would in the office-based situation, where larger nursing staff and just more physicians around in case something were to go wrong and a patient needs a stepped up level of care.
Excellent. And I'm kind of curious for some of the procedures, like, you mentioned a spinal cord stim trial for a permanent implant or other kind of permanent implants. Are you able to do those in the OBL, or is that an ASC situation as well?
Great question. Those would be the ASC. Any type of surgical implantation of a spinal cord stimulator or an interspinous spacer device, or surgical implantation of a sacroiliac fusion device. Anything where we're going to make an incision, need a bovie, really need an operating room scenario, we do that in an ASC.
Sure. Gotcha. So sounds like, the more sick patients for, less advanced procedures, or any of the advanced procedures requiring an actual surgical approach and implant, those will be your ASC cases. And, how many cases are you getting through in a day? Kind of what's a typical day look like?
So typically in a clinic day, I'll see about 25 patients a day, except on Fridays where it's a half day where I'll see maybe 16. patients in that half day on a Friday. I really believe in spending a lot of time with my patients. So I try to limit my clinic days to roughly around 25. Sometimes, that fourth quarter, October, November, December, when everybody's insurance deductibles have been met, and so they're not paying out of pocket, and everyone wants to get their healthcare done before that January 1 flip of the switch where all of a sudden their deductibles are all current again. Those will be a little bit busier. We may see 30 patients during those months just because you're really trying to accommodate as many people as you can, being sensitive to the financial needs of patients. But I really believe in, like I said, spending a lot of time explaining patients' conditions, going over the imaging with them, explaining the treatment process and what they should expect. And you can't see 50 patients in a day. I can't see 50 patients in a day and do that effectively. And so I really try to limit that to 25 patients a day in clinic. And then procedurally, about the same. I'll do about 25 procedures on a given day, sometimes 30. So I really am somewhere between 40 and 60 procedures a week because I do, 2 procedure days. We do a lot in the office. So it's a much faster paced in the office because, like I said, patients are healthier. It's, it takes much less time. And the surgery center will do a little bit lighter of a load, but those patients typically need a little bit higher level of care and time.
And the procedures you're doing, you're running everything from epidural steroid injections to some of the other more complex stuff you mentioned, like stems, kyphos, things of that nature. So it sounds like a pretty fun variety to be dealing with on a daily basis.
It's a really fun mix, and I treat things from head to toe. And so it really does have a lot of reward to it. It's not just the monotony of doing one thing over and over again. Now I will be honest, the majority of what I treat is spinal related pathology because if anyone's ever hurt their back, they know that's going to send you to a doctor faster than just about anything else. You herniate a disc in your back, you're not functioning, and they're going to come get treated for that right away. People who tweak a shoulder or a knee, they may deal with that for a little bit longer period of time. But a disc injury or significant back or neck pain, they're coming in to see you. So I do a lot of epidural steroid injections. I do a lot of facet injections, medial branch nerve blocks, rhizotomies. That's probably 80% of the practice, just because, like I said, that condition's going to slow people down faster than anything.
Sure. Yeah. Just back pain is just so ubiquitously prevalent, as anyone who's been alive for, any portion into their 30s will probably tell you. And,
exactly.
But, you're providing an extremely valuable service for those patients too, helping them to resume their normal activities. And, can you speak a little bit about something you spoke for a moment about earlier, is just this aspect of seeing the patient after the procedure and, seeing how that is going. What's that process like for you? How does that guide you in your practice?
You get that gratification of knowing that you've made a diagnosis, like I said, based on imaging and physical exam findings. You came up with a treatment algorithm and you've implemented that treatment. And then when you get to see a patient back and you get to hear that you've changed their life, and patients will go on my website, they'll leave Google reviews and just talk about this incredible experience they had and how I've given them their life back. And they'll say that to me as well. And to see that difference that you've made in a person's life, and oftentimes in a way that's so much more simple than they ever perceived. And I think people are afraid when they're in pain, oh God, some doc's going to get me hooked on opioids. There's no hope for me. My life is over. And then you show them this the really simple treatment, and they come back and they go, that was it, and I feel this amazing. The reward is really indescribable. And that's what makes the job so fun, is really getting to see this dramatic impact you're having on the quality of people's lives, and to get to hear it from their own mouths that you have drastically changed their world. You've changed their families' lives. You've really given them their life back, enabled them to be friends and spouses and parents again, when that hope was kind of lingering on the outcome of what you've treated them with.
That's amazing. And it's something you get to experience on a pretty regular basis. I can just imagine that's got to be really gratifying.
It's incredible. And it's an everyday thing. It's what makes going to work so satisfying, is not only do we get the benefit of the problem solving, I have to figure out, what is the pain generator? What's causing your pain? Sometimes it's glaringly obvious. You have a big, right foraminal disc herniation at L4-5, and they've got this radicular pain, and you're like, that's easy. I know what it is. But sometimes there's a little bit of trial and error. There's a multiple different potential pain generators. And so using the imaging and using the physical exam, and then, targeting different pain sources procedurally, and then getting to the bottom and solving this puzzle and then seeing the outcome, it really makes the job fun on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that just sounds so much fun. And I wanted to see if you'd elaborate on the imaging part of it. That was actually one of my last questions I want to talk is, how do you feel your background as a radiologist maybe gives you a different perspective, a different approach in this area? How do you use that imaging expertise?
Well, I use it every day. And the fun thing about doing what I do versus being just the radiologist is how many times have we gotten a imaging study come across our desk and the indication is pain.
Pain, yeah.
Great. Thanks for that. Yeah,
dozens of times a day. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a common thing. Well, I know what pain I'm looking for. And so when I have the imaging component to go along with the physical exam finding, it really does help me pinpoint that's it. A lot of times you can see it. And even though the radiologist, we're going through our reports and you're reading the spine and you're just going, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I see there, but is any of it clinically significant? And having the ability to have done the physical exam and heard the entire history of the patient and then look at the imaging, it's oftentimes glaringly obvious from my standpoint, whereas from the radiologist standpoint, it's something that could very easily be missed. And we see these things like subtle little annular tears in the disc, and you're looking at this patient and you're going, this is discogenic pain, 100%. And as a radiologist, you're making a note, okay, there's a small annular tear at, L5S1. And I'm going, oh, that's not small. That's super significant. That's what the source of the pain is. Modic changes will make just kind of off the cuff comments about modic changes on the MRIs. And you realize how clinically significant those can be for vertebrogenic pain. Things like facet arthropathy. It's such a huge component of what I treat. And oftentimes we just make the notation, okay, there's a little bit of fluid in the facet joint. There's a little bit of arthropathy there. And you go, that's the pain generator. That's why we're getting this imaging. And so being able to really correlate between the physical exam finding, the patient history, and seeing the imaging adds a whole new dynamic to our radiology training, because I'm given this incredible gift of actually having the patient sit right in front of me and be able to tell their story.
It's like having cheat codes, you know what you're looking for. It instantly improves your specificity. And, everything you're talking about, pain generators, I've found that, when I first started reading spine MRI, it's painful, right? It's painful to your soul because those studies can be so difficult. The anatomy is so exquisite. There's so much that's wrong. And I found those studies, I kind of dreaded a lot of them. And then once I started thinking about things in terms of pain generators, these are the different things that can actually cause pain, and therefore they're potentially clinically significant. We're not talking about adrenal nodules here. We're talking about things that are, potentially causing debility. And I think it's really fun to look at it that way as a potential puzzle. And then when you have the clinical aspect of seeing the patient in front of you, it's basically like a totally different imaging modality than, oh, here's another degenerative spine. Here goes the descriptive effort. As my attending Dr. Chasen has said, that one's going to be a descriptive effort. It makes it a lot more fun to think about how you're going to treat it.
It does. I had a great mentor at Baylor College of Medicine, Al Watson. He's a breast imager. He's since retired, but he still does board training for, I'm sure a lot of people who have taken board courses on breast imaging, Al Watson has been the guy who's instructed you on them. And he always had a philosophy. He said, every patient you see is a family member. Treat them like your mom, your brother, your sister, your dad, your son, your daughter. And if you have that mentality, you're always going to do the right thing for the patients. And I think it's a great reminder for those radiologists who are reading these spine images. Don't forget that this is a patient attached to it, that this is your mom, your brother, your dad, your sister, your son, your daughter. And if you really take the human perspective of, I'm looking at these images and this is a person who's suffering. And if I can really be detailed about what I'm describing here, and if I can take that understanding that that facet joint could be so debilitating that they're not able to go to work, that they're not able to care for their family. And if I really understand that this pathology has a deeper meaning on a human level, and you approach every study that you read from that standpoint, you're going to become a better physician, and the outcomes for that patient on the other end of that study is going to be that much better.
That's amazing. Just so inspiring. And I think it's something that we can really strive to take into account in our practice as radiologists, whether we're interventional radiologists, interventional pain physicians. It's really easy to get lost in, the imaging and separate it from this is a patient with their own hopes and dreams, family, and everything you're describing, I think is going to make a lot of people really excited to start thinking about interventional pain on a deeper level in our community. I really want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to ask for our radiology residents or med students who are pursuing radiology who are interested in this, any words of wisdom for them?
This is an open pathway. If this is something that you want to pursue, it is absolutely possible for you to pursue it. There may be some challenges in the process because it's not as wide open as, say, MSK or IR or, body radiology, but it is a possible pathway. It's a very rewarding life. Kind of like I said from the beginning, my hours are great. It's one of the reasons I chose it. No nights, no weekends, no calls, no holidays. And so I get the best of both worlds of great patient care, diagnosis, and treatment. I get the reward of the follow-up, and I have a great work-life balance. And so if it's something that you could see as a possible interest in your career, absolutely pursue it. We need more radiologists in this space. Obviously, our ability to read imaging, our ability to hit targets using image guidance is our strong suit as interventional radiologists, and it's a very rewarding field to pursue.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, where can they kind of keep tabs on your latest pursuits?
My website is johnmichelsmd.com. Michels has no A, so it's JOHNMICHELSMD.com. And I welcome any of your listeners also to reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss further the pursuits of possibly going into an interventional pain field as a radiologist and give them some more tips of the trade. And love mentoring, love teaching, would welcome any of them into my practice at any given time too, if they just wanted to see a day of what it's like in the life of practicing interventional pain management.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Michels. I want to thank you for, taking your time to give this to our listeners. And on a personal level, I've had an absolute blast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And again, thank you so much. And for our listeners, we'll see you the next time.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, direct message us at @_BackTable on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. BackTable is produced and hosted by myself, Aaron Fritz, and co-hosts
Chris Beck,
Sabine Dond, Michael Barraza,
and Ali Behetti.
Our audio team lead is Kieran Gannon, with support from
Caleb Hodson,
and Ness Smith-Savadoff.
Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz.
Article and transcript support by Taylor Robinson
and Delaney Aguilar.
Social media and PR by Ann Dang.
Intro and extra music is Ripperoo by Skeptic Moon. Find us on Spotify or at local live music venues in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.